The encounter. The relentless twin sons of Zephyria beat down on Captain Evelyn Reeves as she trudged across the planet's endless expanse of crimson sand. Her exosuit's cooling system whirred in protest, struggling to keep her body temperature stable in the face of the oppressive heat. Evelyn paused, shielding her faceplate with a gloved hand as she surveyed the desolate landscape. "This godforsaken rock," she muttered to herself, her voice echoing in the confines of her helmet. "Why did I ever agree to this mission?" The answer, of course, was credits. The Galactic Exploration Corps had offered a substantial bonus for any scout willing to map the treacherous outer rim, and Evelyn's ship needed repairs she couldn't afford otherwise. Still, as she watched heat mirages shimmer on the horizon, she wondered if any amount of money was worth this misery. Evelyn checked her wrist computer, frowning at the readings. Water reserves at 15%. The artificial voice chimed. "Recommend immediate return to base camp." She sighed, knowing the eye was right. With a reluctant nod, Evelyn turned to begin the long trek back to her makeshift shelter. But as she pivoted, something caught her eye. A glint of metal in the distance, where before there had been only undulating dunes. Curiosity piqued, Evelyn adjusted her course. As she drew closer, the object's form became clearer, the unmistakable outline of a spacecraft, its sleek hull half buried in the sand. It was unlike any design she'd ever encountered, its curves organic and alien. "Well, well," Evelyn murmured. "What do we have here?" She approached cautiously, her hand instinctively moving to the blaster at her hip. The ship showed signs of a rough landing. Scorch marks marred its surface, and debris was scattered in a wide arc around the crash site. As Evelyn circled the vessel, she noticed a gaping hole in its side, as though something had torn through the hull from within. A sound caught her attention, a soft, desperate keening that seemed to emanate from the ship's interior. Evelyn hesitated, her survival instincts warring with her innate curiosity. After a moment's deliberation, she made her decision. "Stupid Reeves," she chided herself. "This is how horror stories start." But even as she spoke, Evelyn was already climbing through the jagged opening. The ship's interior was dark, emergency lights casting an eerie blue glow over twisted metal and shattered control panels. Evelyn activated her suit's flashlight, sweeping the beam across the wreckage. The keening grew louder, guiding her deeper into the vessel's bowels. As she rounded a corner, Evelyn froze, her breath catching in her throat. Before her lay a sight she'd never forget. A figure huddled on the floor, cradling two large furry creatures in its arms. The being was unmistakably alien, its skin a pale lavender, with elaborate patterns swirling across its surface. Long feather-like appendages cascaded from its head in place of hair. But it was the creature's eyes that captivated Evelyn. Huge, luminous orbs that shimmered with an intelligence that seemed almost familiar. The alien's gaze locked onto Evelyn, a mix of fear and desperate hope evident in its expression. It spoke, its voice a melodic trill that Evelyn's universal translator struggled to decipher. "Please," the alien said, the word barely recognizable through the static. "Help them." Evelyn's eyes fell to the creatures in the alien's arms. They resembled nothing so much as overgrown ferrets, their bodies nearly as long as the alien was tall. Their fur, which might once have been lustrous, was matted and dull. Their sides heaved with labored breaths, tongues lolling from parched mouths. "Water," the alien pleaded. "They need water." Evelyn hesitated, her hand unconsciously moving to the canteen at her belt. It contained the last of her water supply, barely enough to get her back to base camp. To give it away would be to risk her own life on this unforgiving world. But as she looked at the alien's desperate face, at the dying creatures in its arms, something stirred within Evelyn. A sense of kinship, perhaps, with another sentient being so far from home. Or maybe it was simply the human drive to help those in need, a trait that had propelled her species to the stars. With a sigh that was equal parts resignation and determination, Evelyn unclipped her canteen. "Here," she said, holding it out to the alien. "It's not much, but it's all I've got." The alien's eyes widened, its feathery crest rising in what Evelyn assumed was surprise. With trembling hands, it accepted the canteen, immediately tipping the precious liquid into the mouths of its companions. As Evelyn watched the creatures drink, their movements becoming more vigorous with each swallow, she couldn't help but smile. It was a small gesture, perhaps, in the grand scheme of the universe. But in that moment, it felt like the most important thing she'd ever done. The alien looked up at Evelyn, gratitude shining in its otherworldly eyes. "Thank you," it said, the words clearer now. "You've saved them." Evelyn nodded, feeling the warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with Zephyria's oppressive heat. "What's your name?" she asked, crouching down to eye level with the alien. The beam trilled softly, a sound that Evelyn's translator rendered as Zaravex. She, Evelyn decided, gestured to the creatures now curled contentedly in her lap. "These are Lumi and Nova, my Keelix." "Keelix," Evelyn repeated, the unfamiliar word rolling awkwardly off her tongue. Zaravex's crest rippled in what might have been amusement. "Companions," she clarified. "Friends." Evelyn nodded, understanding dawning. "Pets," she said with a smile. "We call them pets." As the initial tension of their encounter faded, Evelyn took stock of their situation. The ship was clearly beyond repair, its systems fried by whatever catastrophe had brought it crashing to Zephyria's surface. And while the water had revived Zaravex's Keelix for now, they were all still stranded on a planet that seemed determined to kill them. "We can't stay here," Evelyn said, her mind already racing through possibilities. "My base camp isn't far. It's not much, but it's got shelter and supplies. Think you can walk?" Zaravex nodded, her movements careful as she gathered Lumi and Nova in her arms. The Keelix, seeming to sense the gravity of the situation, remained docile. As they made their way out of the wreckage, Evelyn couldn't help but marvel at the strange turn her mission had taken. She'd come to Zephyria seeking credits and glory. Instead, she'd found an alien in need of help, and perhaps, though she didn't realize it yet, the beginnings of a friendship that would change the course of her life. The journey back to Evelyn's camp was arduous. The alien's physiology wasn't well suited to Zephyria's harsh environment, and she struggled to keep pace with Evelyn's longer strides. The Keelix, too, were clearly suffering in the heat, their thick fur ill-adapted to the desert world. Evelyn found herself alternating between scouting ahead and doubling back to assist Zaravex. As they trudged across the endless dunes, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. More than once, she caught glimpses of movement at the edge of her vision, only to find nothing but shifting sand when she turned to look. Almost there, Evelyn encouraged as they crested a final ridge. Below them, nestled in the lee of a towering rock formation, sat her temporary home, a standard-issue survival dome, its metallic surface reflecting the glare of Zephyria's suns. As they approached the dome, Evelyn's wrist computer chimed an alert. "Unidentified life forms detected," the AI intoned. "Recommend caution." Evelyn frowned, her hand moving to her blaster. "Stay close," she murmured to Zaravex. They were mere meters from the dome's airlock when the sand before them erupted. A massive form burst forth, all gnashing teeth and flailing limbs. Evelyn barely had time to register the creature's insectoid features before it was upon them. "Sandstalker," she cried, shoving Zaravex aside and bringing her blaster to bear. The alien stumbled, clutching her Keelix close as she fell. The Sandstalker's mandibles clacked, venom dripping from its fangs as it loomed over Evelyn. Time seemed to slow. Evelyn knew her blaster wouldn't penetrate the creature's chitinous hide. She had one chance, one desperate gambit. As the Sandstalker lunged, Evelyn dropped to one knee, aimed, and fired. Not at the beast itself, but at the sand beneath its feet. The superheated plasma turned the ground to glass, and the stalker's momentum carried it forward onto the suddenly slick surface. The creature screeched in confusion as its legs slid out from under it. Evelyn didn't waste the opportunity. She grabbed Zoravex's arm, hauling the alien to her feet, and together they sprinted the final distance to the dome. Evelyn slammed her hand on the airlock controls, and the door hissed open. They tumbled inside just as the Sandstalker regained its footing. The beast hurled itself at the closing airlock, its bulk denting the metal. But the door held, sealing them safely inside. For a long moment, the only sound was their ragged breathing and the muffled scrabbling of the frustrated predator outside. Then, to Evelyn's surprise, Zoravex began to laugh. A musical, trilling sound that was infectious in its joy. Evelyn found herself joining in, the release of tension overwhelming. As their laughter faded, she met Zoravex's gaze, seeing her own relief mirrored in those alien eyes. "Welcome to Casa de Reeves," Evelyn said with a grin, gesturing to the cramped but well-equipped interior of the dome. "It's not the Ritz, but it'll keep us alive." As they settled in, tending to the Keelix and taking stock of their supplies, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much greater adventure. Little did she know just how right she was, or how her act of kindness would ripple across the galaxy, changing the course of human and alien history alike. Unlikely allies. As the twin suns of Zephyria dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the crimson dunes, Evelyn Reeves found herself in a situation she'd never imagined when she'd signed up for this scouting mission. The interior of her survival dome, usually a haven of solitude, now buzzed with an energy that was equal parts excitement and apprehension. Zoravex sat cross-legged on the floor, her lavender skin seeming to glow in the dome's artificial lighting. The alien's feathery crest rippled with subtle movements that Evelyn was beginning to recognize as expressions of emotion. Currently, it seemed to indicate a mix of curiosity and concern as Zoravex tended to her Keelix. Lumi and Nova, the ferret-like creatures, had recovered remarkably well from their near-death experience. They now explored the confines of the dome with boundless energy, their long bodies twisting and turning as they investigated every nook and cranny. Evelyn watched them with a mixture of amusement and wariness, hoping they wouldn't damage any of her equipment. "They seem lively," Evelyn remarked, breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. Zoravex trilled softly, a sound that Evelyn's translator rendered as laughter. "They are feeling much better, thanks to you," the alien said, her otherworldly eyes fixed on Evelyn with an intensity that was almost unnerving. "I owe you a great debt, Evelyn Reeves." Evelyn shrugged, feeling a flush creep up her neck. Anyone would have done the same, she mumbled, busying herself with the dome's environmental controls to avoid meeting Zoravex's gaze. "No," Zoravex said, her voice taking on a somber tone. "Not anyone. In my experience, kindness such as yours is rare indeed." There was a weight to those words that made Evelyn pause. She turned back to her unlikely guest, taking in the alien's posture, the way Zoravex's shoulders hunched slightly, as though carrying an invisible burden. "Want to talk about it?" Evelyn asked, settling herself on the floor across from Zoravex. "I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled to have company out here in the middle of nowhere. But I can't help but wonder what brought you to this particular godforsaken rock." Zoravex was silent for a long moment, her crest flattening against her head in what Evelyn was coming to recognize as a sign of distress. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I am running," she said, the words seeming to pain her. "From my people. From a fate I cannot accept." Evelyn leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "What kind of fate?" Zoravex's gaze dropped to her hands, which were absently stroking Nova's fur. Was to be joined with the hive mind of my species. It is considered the highest honor, a chance to transcend individual existence and become part of something greater." "Sounds intense," Evelyn said, trying to keep the skepticism out of her voice. The idea of losing her individuality to some collective consciousness was utterly alien to her, and not in a good way. It is meant to be beautiful, Zaravex continued. A merging of minds, a sharing of knowledge and experience across generations. But she trailed off, her crest rippling with conflicting emotions. But it's not what you want, Evelyn finished for her. Zaravex looked up, surprise evident in her luminous eyes. Yes, she breathed. How did you know? Evelyn shrugged. Lucky guess. That and the fact that you're out here in the middle of nowhere instead of back home getting mind melded. A small smile tugged at the corners of Zaravex's mouth. You are perceptive, Evelyn Reeves. Yes, I could not bring myself to join the hive mind. The thought of losing myself, of becoming just another voice in the collective. It terrified me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. So I ran. I took Lumi and Nova and fled in a stolen ship, but they followed me. They will not stop until they find me and bring me back. Evelyn whistled low. Well, Dan, that's quite a story. She paused, considering her next words carefully. Listen, Zaravex, I'm not going to pretend I understand all the ins and outs of your culture, but where I come from, we believe pretty strongly in the right to choose your own path. If you don't want to be part of this hive mind thing, then that's your call to make. Zaravex's crest perked up, hope shimmering in her eyes. You do not think me selfish for putting my own desires above the needs of my people. Evelyn snorted. Selfish? Hell no. Brave is what I'd call it. Standing up for what you believe in, even when everyone's telling you you're wrong. That takes guts. The alien's expression softened, gratitude evident in every line of her body. Thank you, Evelyn. Your words, they mean more than you know. As if sensing the emotional moment, Lumi chose that instant to leap onto Evelyn's lap, chittering excitedly. Evelyn yelped in surprise, then found herself laughing as the Keelix nuzzled against her hand, demanding attention. Well, aren't you a friendly little guy? Evelyn chuckled, scratching behind Lumi's ears. The creature made a sound that was halfway between a purr and a trill, its long body vibrating with contentment. Zaravex watched the interaction with obvious delight. They like you, she said, her own hand reaching out to stroke Nova's back. Helix are excellent judges of character. They can sense kindness and bravery in others. Evelyn felt a warmth bloom in her chest at the compliment. Well, they're not so bad themselves, she said, grinning as Lumi twisted in her lap, presenting its belly for rubs. As the night wore on, Evelyn and Zaravex traded stories. The human regaled her new friend with tales of her adventures across the galaxy, some harrowing, some humorous, all tinged with the unique perspective of a species still new to interstellar travel. In turn, Zaravex shared glimpses of her own world, a place of crystal spires and singing seas, where thought and emotion flowed as freely as the wind. It was in the early hours of the morning, as Zephyria's moons cast their pale light through the dome's viewports, that Evelyn made her decision. I'm going to help you, she said suddenly, interrupting Zaravex mid-sentence. The alien blinked, her crest rising in surprise. Help me? How? Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes bright with determination. I'm going to get you off this planet. My ship's not far from here, a few days' journey on foot. It's not much, but it's fast, and it's got a cloaking device. We can use it to get you somewhere safe, somewhere your people won't find you. Zaravex's eyes widened, a mix of hope and fear swirling in their depths. You would do that for me, but what of your mission, your responsibilities? Evelyn waved a hand dismissively. Mapping the outer rim can wait. This is more important. She grinned, a hint of mischief in her expression. Besides, I've always wanted to be a dashing rogue, helping beautiful aliens escape their oppressive societies. A flush of deeper purple spread across Zaravex's cheeks at the compliment. I do not know what to say. Your kindness overwhelms me, Evelyn Reeves. Then don't say anything, Evelyn replied with a wink. Just be ready to move at first light. We've got a long journey ahead of us. As they prepared for sleep, each lost in their own thoughts about the adventure to come, neither human nor alien noticed the small, blinking light on Evelyn's communications console. A light that indicated an incoming transmission, carrying a message that would change everything. The next morning dawned harsh and unforgiving, Zephyria's twin suns already blazing in the sky as Evelyn and Zaravex emerged from the survival dome. The Helix, Lumi, and Nova bounded ahead, their enthusiasm for the new day seemingly undiminished by the oppressive heat. "Ready for this?" Evelyn asked, adjusting the straps of her pack. She'd loaded it with as many supplies as she dared, knowing the journey to her ship would be arduous. Zaravex nodded, her crest rippling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I am ready. Though I must admit, the thought of crossing this desert is daunting." Evelyn grinned, clapping the alien on the shoulder. "Don't worry. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve to make the journey easier. Just stick close and follow my lead." As they set out across the crimson dunes, Evelyn couldn't shake a nagging feeling that she was forgetting something important. She chalked it up to nerves and focused on the path ahead, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. They had been walking for perhaps an hour when Zaravex suddenly stumbled, her lavender skin taking on a worrying pallor. Evelyn was at her side in an instant, supporting the alien's weight. "What's wrong?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Zaravex's breathing was labored, her crest lying flat against her head. "The heat," she gasped. "My people, we are not adapted to such extreme temperatures." Evelyn cursed under her breath. She should have anticipated this. "Okay, let's get you cooled down," she said, guiding Zaravex to the shelter of a nearby rock formation. She pulled out a canteen, helping the alien take small sips of water. As Zaravex's breathing slowly returned to normal, Evelyn's mind raced. They couldn't hope to cross the desert like this, not without risking Zaravex's life. They needed another plan. It was then that inspiration struck. Evelyn remembered the sandstalker they'd encountered the day before, how it had burst from beneath the dunes, perfectly adapted to life in this harsh environment. "I've got an idea," she said, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "But it's a bit crazy. You up for it?" Zaravex looked at her curiously, her crest perking up with interest. "After all you have done for me, Evelyn Reeves, I trust you completely. What did you have in mind?" Evelyn grinned, already reaching for her toolkit. "We're going to build ourselves a sand submarine." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Evelyn's sand submarine turned out to be an ingenious modification of her survival dome's environmental systems, combined with parts salvaged from Zaravex's crashed ship. The result was a crude but effective vehicle that could burrow through the sand, using the planet's cooler subsurface layers to protect them from the scorching heat above. As they prepared to depart in their makeshift craft, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. It wasn't pretty, and it certainly wasn't regulation, but it was a testament to human ingenuity. The ability to adapt and overcome that had carried her species to the stars. "All aboard," she called out, helping Zaravex into the cramped interior. Lumi and Nova followed, seeming to sense the importance of staying close. As the hatch sealed behind them and the submarine began to sink beneath the sand, Evelyn caught Zaravex's eye. The alien was watching her with an expression of wonder and admiration that made Evelyn's heart skip a beat. "You continue to amaze me, Evelyn Reeves," Zaravex said softly. "I do not think I will ever fully understand humans, but I am grateful beyond words to have met you." Evelyn felt a flush creep up her neck, but before she could respond, a sudden lurch rocked the vehicle. Warning lights flashed on the makeshift control panel, and a sound like grinding metal filled the air. "What's happening?" Zaravex cried, her crest flattening in alarm. Evelyn's hands flew over the controls, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I don't know," she muttered. "Something's interfering with our navigation system. It's almost like—" Her words were cut off as the submarine came to an abrupt halt, sand pouring in through suddenly appearing cracks in the hull. As Evelyn and Zaravex clung to each other, the Keelix whimpering in fear, the vehicle was wrenched upward with tremendous force. They burst from the sand in a shower of crimson grains, blinking in the sudden harsh light of Zephyria's suns. As Evelyn's eyes adjusted, she felt her heart sink. Surrounding them was a squadron of sleek, insectoid ships, unmistakably of the same design as Zaravex's crashed vessel, and at their center, a massive craft that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "No," Zaravex whispered, her voice filled with dread. "They found us." As Evelyn stared at the alien armada, her mind racing for a way out of this impossible situation, she couldn't help but think that their adventure had only just begun. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, that nagging feeling returned, the sense that she'd overlooked something crucial, something that might just hold the key to their salvation. Perilous journey. The alien armada loomed over Evelyn and Zaravex's makeshift sand submarine, casting long shadows across the crimson dunes. Evelyn's mind raced, searching for a way out of their seemingly hopeless situation. Beside her, Zaravex trembled, her lavender skin taking on a sickly pale hue. "Any chance these are friendly reinforcements?" Evelyn quipped, trying to inject some levity into the tense atmosphere. Zaravex's crest flattened against her head, a clear sign of distress. "No," she whispered. "These are the Seekers. They've come to take me back." As if on cue, a beam of shimmering energy shot out from the largest ship, enveloping their battered vehicle. Evelyn felt a strange tingling sensation wash over her body, and she instinctively reached out to grab Zaravex's hand. "Whatever happens," she said, meeting the alien's luminous eyes, "we're in this together." Zaravex nodded, squeezing Evelyn's hand tightly. The Keelix, sensing the danger, huddled close to their mistress, their usually playful demeanor replaced by wary alertness. With a lurch, their sand submarine began to rise, pulled inexorably towards the massive alien ship. Evelyn's free hand flew over the controls, desperately trying to break free of the tractor beam, but to no avail. As they neared the ship's underbelly, a seam appeared in its smooth surface, a rising open to reveal a cavernous docking bay. "Brace yourself," Evelyn warned as they were unceremoniously deposited onto the bay's floor with a resounding clang. For a moment, all was still. Then, with a hiss of escaping air, the hatch of their battered craft popped open. Evelyn tensed, ready for a fight, but what greeted them was not the armed force she'd expected. Instead, a single figure stood before them. Tall and willowy, with the same lavender skin as Zaravex, but adorned with intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Its crest was a magnificent array of shimmering tendrils that moved with a life of their own. Zaravex, the being spoke, its voice a harmonious blend of tones that seemed to resonate in Evelyn's very bones. "You have led us on quite a chase, young one." Zaravex stepped forward, placing herself between Evelyn and the newcomer. "Elder Kix," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I will not return. I cannot join the hive mind. Please, try to understand." The being, Elder Kix, tilted its head, the motion fluid and alien. "And what of your duty to your people, to the greater good?" With all due respect, Evelyn interjected, unable to stay silent any longer. "Where I come from, forcing someone to give up their individuality isn't considered the greater good." Elder Kix's gaze shifted to Evelyn, its luminous eyes widening slightly. "Ah, the human. You are an unexpected variable in this equation." It paused, seeming to consider something. Perhaps you are the key to resolving this dilemma." Before Evelyn could ask what that meant, a shimmer in the air caught her attention. The docking bay began to fade away, replaced by a swirling vortex of colors and abstract shapes. She felt a moment of vertigo, and then they were standing in a vast, crystalline chamber. Towering spires of what looked like living crystal stretched towards an impossibly high ceiling. Streams of multicolored energy flowed through the air, coalescing into intricate patterns before dispersing again. "Welcome," Elder Kix said, its voice echoing in the cavernous space, "to the heart of the hive mind." Evelyn gaped, her mind struggling to process the alien beauty surrounding them. Beside her, Zara Vex gasped, her crest rising in a mix of awe and fear. "Why have you brought us here?" Zara Vex demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. Elder Kix gestured expansively. "To show you what you fear, and to show your human friend what she does not understand. The hive mind is not the loss of self you imagine, Zara Vex. It is the ultimate expression of self, multiplied across countless minds." As if in response to the elder's words, the streams of energy began to coalesce, forming into recognizable shapes, faces, landscapes, abstract concepts given form. Evelyn watched in wonder as entire worlds seemed to bloom and fade before her eyes. "It's beautiful," she admitted, even as a part of her recoiled at the alien nature of it all. "It is who we are," Elder Kix said softly. "The combined knowledge, experiences, and essence of our entire species. And it calls to you, Zara Vex. Can you not feel it?" Evelyn turned to her friend, concerned. Zara Vex's eyes were wide, her crest undulating in complex patterns. She took a hesitant step forward, her hand outstretched as if to touch one of the shimmering energy streams. "Wait," Evelyn said, grabbing Zara Vex's arm. "Are you sure about this?" Zara Vex blinked, seeming to come back to herself. She looked at Evelyn, conflict evident in her luminous eyes. I don't know. It's calling to me, Evelyn. It's so beautiful, so vast. But I'm afraid. What if I lose myself in it?" Elder Kix stepped forward, its movements graceful and fluid. "You will not lose yourself, young one. You will find yourself, and so much more. The hive mind is not a prison, but a gateway to infinite possibilities." Evelyn frowned, a nagging doubt gnawing at her. Something about this felt wrong, too perfect, too easy. She thought back to their journey across the desert, to the bond they'd formed in such a short time. There was a strength in Zara Vex, a uniqueness that shouldn't be subsumed into some cosmic groupthink, no matter how beautiful it appeared. "Zara Vex," Evelyn said, her voice soft but firm. "Remember why you ran in the first place. Remember Lumi and Nova, how much they depend on you, how much they love you as an individual." At the mention of her Helix companions, Zara Vex's expression cleared. She looked around, suddenly alarmed. "Where are they? What have you done with them?" Elder Kix waved a hand dismissively. "The animals are safe, in stasis. They have no place here, in the realm of higher consciousness." Something in the elder's tone set off warning bells in Evelyn's mind. She'd heard that kind of dismissive attitude before, from those who thought themselves above the lesser beings of the galaxy. It never ended well. "That's not your call to make," Evelyn said, her voice hardening. "Those animals are part of who Zara Vex is. You can't just erase that because it doesn't fit into your grand plan." Elder Kix's crest rippled, the first sign of agitation it had shown. "You do not understand, human. The hive mind is the pinnacle of our evolution. It is our destiny." "Maybe," Evelyn conceded, "but it should be a choice, not a mandate. And from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to force that choice on someone who's already said no." The crystalline chamber seemed to pulse around them, the streams of energy taking on a more frenzied pace. Evelyn tensed, ready for a fight. But it was Zara Vex who spoke next. "She's right," the young alien said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I've seen the wonders of the hive mind, Elder Kix. I acknowledge its beauty and its power, but it is not my path. My journey lies elsewhere, with Evelyn, with my Helix, among the stars." Elder Kix's crest flattened, its luminous eyes narrowing. "You would throw away millennia of evolution, of progress. For what? A human stranger and a pair of animals." Zara Vex stood tall, her crest fully extended in a display of defiance. "I choose my own path, Elder. That is progress. That is evolution. For a long moment, silence reigned in the vast chamber. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the illusion around them began to crack and fall away. Evelyn blinked, and they were back in the docking bay of the alien ship, surrounded by the wreckage of their sand submarine. Elder Kix stood before them, its form seeming diminished somehow. "So be it," it said, its harmonious voice tinged with sadness. "You are released from your duty to the hive mind, Zaravex. May you find what you seek among the stars." With a gesture, a shimmering portal appeared beside them. Through it, Evelyn could see the familiar interior of her own ship. "Go," Elder Kix said, "before I reconsider this moment of weakness." Evelyn didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed Zaravex's hand and pulled her towards the portal. "Wait," Zaravex said, resisting for a moment. "Lumi and Nova." As if in answer, the two Keelix came bounding through the portal, chittering excitedly as they reunited with their mistress. With a final look back at Elder Kix, its alien features unreadable, Evelyn and Zaravex stepped through the portal. There was a moment of disorientation, and then they were standing in the cramped but familiar confines of Evelyn's ship. "Well," Evelyn said, a grin spreading across her face despite the tension of the past few hours. "That was one hell of a detour." Zaravex laughed, the sound like tinkling crystals. "Indeed it was, Evelyn Reeves, and I cannot thank you enough for standing by me." As Evelyn moved to the ship's controls, plotting a course away from Zephyria and the hive mind ships, she couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of a much greater adventure. She'd set out to map the outer rim and had instead found a friend, a companion, and a cause worth fighting for. "So," she said, turning to Zaravex with a mischievous glint in her eye, "where to next? We got a whole galaxy to explore, and I've got a feeling we're going to make quite the team." Zaravex's crest rippled with excitement, her luminous eyes shining with the promise of adventures to come. "Anywhere," she said, her hand finding Evelyn's, "as long as we're together." As the stars streaked by outside the view screen, Evelyn felt a sense of purpose and belonging she'd never known before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they might face, she knew that with Zaravex by her side, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. The outer rim awaited, full of mysteries to unravel and wonders to discover. And for Evelyn Reeves, human explorer and unlikely hero, the greatest adventure of all was just beginning. Pursued by danger, the vast expanse of space stretched out before them, a canvas of infinite possibilities painted with swirling nebulae and twinkling stars. Evelyn Reeves sat at the controls of her ship, the Stellar Wanderer, a contented smile playing on her lips. It had been 3 standard weeks since their narrow escape from the hive mind, and life aboard the small vessel had fallen into a comfortable rhythm. Zaravex lounged in the co-pilot's chair, her lavender skin shimmering softly in the glow of the instrument panels. Her crest rippled gently, a sign Evelyn had come to recognize as contentment. At their feet, Lumi and Nova dozed peacefully, their furry bodies intertwined. "You know," Evelyn said, breaking the companionable silence, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually enjoying having roommates on this bucket of bolts." Zaravex trilled softly, her species equivalent of laughter. "And I never imagined I would find such peace so far from my homeworld. You have shown me wonders, Evelyn Reeves." The next few minutes were a blur of alarms, flashing lights, and the deafening roar of the ship's straining engines. Evelyn's world narrowed to the viewport and the redouts before her, every ounce of her concentration focused on keeping them alive. Finally, with a last mighty effort, the Stellar Wanderer broke free of the planet's gravitational pull. The alarms quieted, and the shuddering of the ship subsided to a gentler vibration. Evelyn sagged in her seat, exhaustion washing over her. "Well," she said, managing a weak smile, "that was fun." Zaravex let out a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a sob. "You humans have a very strange definition of fun, Evelyn Reeves." As the adrenaline of their narrow escape faded, The reality of their situation began to sink in. The stellar wanderer had taken a beating, and they were now stranded in an unknown system with no idea if more bounty hunters might be on their way. "We need to find a place to lay low and make repairs," Evelyn said, scanning the system for options. Her eyes lit upon a small rocky planet not far from their current position. "There. It's not much, but it should have enough atmosphere for us to breathe, and its magnetic field might help mask our presence." As they approached the planet, Evelyn couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. They'd escaped one danger, but she had a feeling their troubles were far from over. The hive mind's persistence in pursuing Zaravex suggested that there was more at stake than just one rebellious individual. The landing was rougher than Evelyn would have liked, the stellar wanderer's damaged landing gear groaning in protest as they touched down on a desolate plain. Dust billowed around them, obscuring the view outside. "Well, home sweet home," Evelyn quipped as she powered down the engines. "At least for the next few days while we make repairs." Zaravex nodded, her expression somber. "Evelyn, I am sorry. My presence has brought you nothing but danger. Perhaps it would be better if we parted ways. I could not bear it if harm came to you because of me." Evelyn turned to her friend, her expression softening. "Hey, none of that talk. We're in this together, remember? Besides," she added with a grin, "Danger is kind of my middle name. Evelyn Danger Reeves. That's me." The joke had its intended effect, drawing a small smile from Zaravex. But the alien's luminous eyes remained troubled. "Still, we cannot run forever. The hive mind will not stop pursuing me. And now that they have resorted to hiring bounty hunters, I fear the situation may be even more dire than we realized." Evelyn nodded, her expression growing serious. "You're right. We need to figure out why they want you back so badly. There's got to be more to this than just one runaway citizen." As if in response to her words, a soft chime sounded from the ship's communication console. Evelyn frowned, moving to investigate. "That's weird. We shouldn't be able to receive any transmissions out here, not with our comm array damage." She activated the message, and a familiar, harmonious voice filled the cabin. "Zaravex, Evelyn Reeves, I hope this message finds you well. It is I, Elder Kix." Zaravex gasped, her crest rising in surprise. Evelyn tensed, ready for some new threat, but the Elder's next words caught her off guard. "I send this message at great risk to myself. The situation within the hive mind has deteriorated since your departure. Your defiance, Zaravex, has sparked something unforeseen. Questions are being asked, doubts are spreading, and those in power are responding with increasing desperation." The Elder's voice grew softer, tinged with what sounded like regret. "I was wrong to try to force you to join us, young one. I see that now. Your human friend was right. The choice must be freely made. But now, I fear that choice may be lost to us all if action is not taken." Evelyn and Zaravex exchanged worried glances as Elder Kix continued. "There is a faction within the hive mind that seeks to use our collective consciousness as a weapon to dominate rather than to understand. They see your independence as a threat to their plans. That is why they hunt you so relentlessly. I have done what I can to aid you from within, but my influence wanes. You must be cautious, for the hunters will not cease their pursuit. But know this, you are not alone. There are those among us who see the wisdom in your choice, who yearn for the freedom you have claimed." The message crackled with interference, Elder Kix's voice growing fainter. "Seek the Nexus key. It holds the power to change everything. You must find it before they." With a final burst of static, the transmission cut out, leaving Evelyn and Zaravex in stunned silence. "Well," Evelyn said after a long moment, "I guess our little adventure just got a whole lot bigger." Zaravex nodded, her expression a mix of determination and fear. "The Nexus key. I have heard whispers of it, but I always thought it was a myth. a relic of our species past, said to hold unimaginable power. Evelyn grinned, a familiar spark of excitement igniting in her eyes. Sounds like my kind of myth. So, what do you say, partner? Ready to save your people, and maybe the galaxy while we're at it? As Zara Vex met Evelyn's gaze, a silent understanding passed between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they might face, they would face them together. The hunt for the Nexus Key had begun, and with it, a journey that would test their courage, their friendship, and their very understanding of the universe itself. A new beginning. The twin moons of Zephyria cast an eerie glow over the barren landscape as Evelyn Reeves and Zara Vex crouched behind a rocky outcropping. In the distance, the imposing silhouette of the hive mind's central complex loomed against the star-studded sky. After weeks of searching, close calls, and piecing together ancient clues, their quest for the Nexus Key had led them back to where it all began. I still can't believe it was here the whole time, Evelyn whispered, her eyes never leaving the complex. Talk about hiding something in plain sight. Zara Vex's crest rippled with a mix of anxiety and determination. The elders always taught us that our greatest strengths lay within. I never imagined they meant it quite so literally. Their journey to this point had been fraught with danger and discovery. The search for the Nexus Key had taken them to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, from the crystalline caves of Lumina Prime to the sentient gas clouds of the Nebula Nexus. They'd battled bounty hunters, outsmarted rival treasure seekers, and even formed an uneasy alliance with a rogue faction of the hive mind, led by the now exiled Elder Kix. But every clue, every ancient text, every whispered legend had pointed them back to Zephyria. The Nexus Key, it turned out, wasn't a physical object at all, but a psychic imprint hidden within the very heart of the hive mind itself. You remember the plan? Evelyn asked, checking her modified blaster one last time. The weapon hummed with energy, courtesy of some clever tinkering and a few borrowed hive mind crystals. Zara Vex nodded, her luminous eyes reflecting the starlight. I will use our connection to the rogue faction to create a diversion. You'll slip in through the maintenance tunnels and make your way to the central chamber. Once there, Evelyn finished, I'll use the psychic amplifier to boost your signal. You'll be able to connect to the hive mind and locate the Nexus Key without being absorbed. It was a risky plan, filled with potential pitfalls. But after everything they'd been through, after all they'd learned about the corrupting influence growing within the hive mind, they knew it was their only chance to set things right. Evelyn reached out, taking Zara Vex's hand in her own. The alien skin was cool to the touch, but Evelyn could feel the slight tremor that belied her friend's nervousness. Hey, she said softly, whatever happens in there, we're in this together. You've got this. Zara Vex's crest rippled with gratitude, and she squeezed Evelyn's hand. Thank you, Evelyn Reeves, for everything. You've shown me a universe I never knew existed, both out there among the stars and within myself. A lump formed in Evelyn's throat, but she pushed it down with a crooked smile. Save the sappy stuff for when we've saved the day, all right. Now, let's go make some noise. With a final nod, they split up. Zara Vex moved towards the main entrance, her form shimmering as she activated the cloaking device they'd acquired on their travels. Evelyn watched her go, then turned her attention to the small access hatch half hidden among the rocks. With a deep breath, she slipped inside. The next few minutes were a blur of narrow corridors, flashing alarm lights, and the distant sound of chaos as Zara Vex's diversion took effect. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she navigated the labyrinthine complex, relying on memorized schematics and her own instincts to guide her. Finally, she reached the central chamber. The massive door loomed before her, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to move and shift as she watched. Evelyn pulled out the psychic amplifier, a cobbled-together device that looked more like a child's science project than a piece of advanced alien tech. Here goes nothing, she muttered, pressing her hand to the door's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like 1,000 whispers all at once, the door melted away. Evelyn stumbled forward into a vast, spherical room. At its center floated a pulsing orb of pure energy, tendrils of light stretching out to connect with pods lining the walls. The heart of the hive mind. Evelyn felt a pressure building in her head as she approached the orb. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. She gritted her teeth, fighting against the urge to simply let go, to allow herself to be absorbed into the collective consciousness. With shaking hands, she activated the psychic amplifier. The device hummed to life, creating a bubble of energy around her. The pressure in her head eased, and Evelyn let out a sigh of relief. "Okay, Zora," she said aloud, though her friend was far away. "I'm in position. Do your thing." For a long moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, suddenly, the orb pulsed with a new intensity. The tendrils of light began to shift and swirl, forming patterns Evelyn couldn't begin to comprehend. The whispers in her mind took on a familiar tone. Zaravex's mental voice, amplified 1,000-fold. "I see it." Zaravex's voice echoed in Evelyn's mind. "The Nexus key. It's beautiful, Evelyn, and terrible. So much power, so much potential for both creation and destruction." Evelyn's hand tightened on the amplifier. "Can you access it? Can you use it to purge the corruption from the hive mind?" There was a pause, filled with a sense of immense concentration. I think so. But Evelyn, there's something else. The key, it's not just a tool. It's a choice, a crossroads. I can see possible futures branching out before us." "What do you mean?" Evelyn asked, a knot of worry forming in her stomach. The hive mind was never meant to be a single monolithic entity, Zaravex explained, her mental voice tinged with awe. "It was meant to be a network, a way for our people to share knowledge and experiences while maintaining their individuality. The Nexus key can restore that original purpose. But what? But it would mean the end of the hive mind as we know it. No more elders, no more centralized control. Every Andarian would have the choice to connect or disconnect at will. It would be a fundamental shift in our entire society." Evelyn's mind reeled at the implications. That's a pretty big decision, Zara. Are you sure you want to make that call for your entire species? There was a long pause, filled with the hum of the psychic amplifier and the pulsing of the energy orb. When Zaravex spoke again, her voice was filled with a quiet determination. "It's not my call to make, Evelyn. It's everyone's. The Nexus key can give that choice back to my people. After that, it will be up to each individual to decide their own path." A surge of pride and affection welled up in Evelyn's chest. "Do it," she said simply. The energy orb flared with blinding intensity. Evelyn shielded her eyes, feeling a wave of something wash over her. It was as if the very fabric of reality was shifting, realigning itself around a new paradigm. When the light faded, Evelyn blinked spots from her vision. The orb still pulsed at the center of the room, but its light seemed softer now, more inviting. The pods lining the walls had opened, and Evelyn could see Andarians stirring within, looks of confusion and wonder on their alien faces. A commotion at the door drew Evelyn's attention. Zaravex burst into the room, followed by Elder Kix and several members of the rogue faction. They all stopped short, staring in awe at the transformed heart of the hive mind. "It's done," Zaravex said, her voice filled with emotion. "The key has been activated. The choice has been given back to our people." Elder Kix stepped forward, its crest rippling with a complex mix of emotions. "You have done what I could not, young one. You have given us a future I never dared to imagine." As the gravity of what they'd accomplished began to sink in, Evelyn made her way to Zaravex's side. Without a word, they clasped hands, drawing strength and comfort from each other's presence. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The transformation of Andarian society was not without its challenges. There were those who resisted the change, who clung to the old ways of the hive mind. But for every voice of dissent, there were dozens more embracing their newfound freedom. Evelyn watched it all with a sense of pride and wonder. She'd set out to map the outer rim and had instead played a part in reshaping an entire civilization. It was almost too much to comprehend. On the eve of their departure from Zephyria, Evelyn and Zaravex stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The skyline was alive with lights and movement as Endarians explored their new reality. "So," Evelyn said, leaning on the railing, "what's next for you? Going to stick around and help build this new society of yours?" Zaravex was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the horizon. When she turned to Evelyn, her luminous eyes were filled with a familiar sparkle of adventure. "Actually," she said, her crest rippling with excitement, "I was hoping I might continue to travel with you. If you'll have me, of course. There's still so much of the universe I want to see, so many new experiences to be had." A grin spread across Evelyn's face. "I thought you'd never ask. The stellar wanderer's not the same without you and the furballs." As if on cue, Lumi and Nova bounded onto the balcony, chittering excitedly. They'd become minor celebrities among the Andarians, symbols of the joy and companionship that existed outside the hive mind. Zaravex laughed, the sound like tinkling crystals on the night air. "It seems our path is set then. Onwards to new adventures." Evelyn nodded, her heart light with the promise of things to come. "You know," she said, a teasing note in her voice, "when I offered you that canteen of water back in the desert, I had no idea I was signing up for all this. Do you regret it?" Zaravex asked, a hint of worry creeping into her tone. Evelyn's expression softened. She reached out, taking Zaravex's hand in her own. Not for a single moment. As they stood there, hand in hand, watching the rebirth of a civilization they'd helped to transform, Evelyn Reeves knew that her greatest adventures were still to come. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and she had the best possible companion by her side to explore it with. The outer rim awaited, and with it endless possibilities. For a human explorer and an Andarian rebel, for a pair of mischievous Keelix, and whatever other strange and wonderful beings they might encounter along the way, the journey was only just beginning. And as the first light of Zephyria's twin suns peeked over the horizon, Evelyn smiled. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they might face, she knew that together they could overcome anything. For in the end, it wasn't advanced technology or psychic powers that had saved the day. It was something much simpler, much more fundamental. The power of choice, of friendship, and of the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of adversity. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would they.